French onion soup, I'm sure, is on the top of everyone's soup list, and if it's not, well, bone marrow toast will be sure to change that. Promise. Start by grabbing a sheet tray and a cooling rack. We're going to roast these bones off first. Lightly cover with olive oil and season with sea salt. These guys have a ton of flavor and fat already, so a little here goes a long way. We're going to roast these in a 400-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 20 minutes, or until they get nice and roasted and the marrow starts to fall out on its own. While that's going, we need to go to town on some onions. We're making about 2 gallons of soup, so we'll need quite a bit of onions here. I grabbed a 5-pound bag, and I'll definitely go through all of them. If you've watched my knife skills video, you're already a pro at an onion julienne. But in case you didn't, here it is one more time. We're going to start by cutting off the top and the bottom, both axes, of the onion itself. I like doing this all at once rather than doing each individual onion separately. That way, by doing every step in order, you save time by putting down your knife and picking it back up. Trust me, this will save you a bunch of time in the long run. Now that all of our onions are pre-cut and cleaned, we can begin to slice all of them. We are going for a julienne, which is a thin 1/8 of an inch thickness stick that is ever so famous for French onion soup. Using your non-slicing hand, hold the onion in a claw-like fashion, keeping your fingertips and thumb tucked away. I use my smaller knuckle on my fingers to guide the blade carefully across the vegetable to ensure that I don't cut myself. Doing this, I promise, will spare you your fingers, so go slow and get comfortable with this position. Matt, you're saying I have to cut 5 pounds of onions? I'm gonna cry like a baby. Stop it, you're not a baby. With these tips, you're sure to keep your babbling brook to yourself and out of the kitchen. First, always use fresh onions. If your onions are old or feel somewhat soft, then the cell walls have already begun to break down and will definitely make you cry. Second, always use a sharp knife, never a dull knife. What actually makes you tear is the oils expelling from the onion, lingering in the air and getting into your eyes, making you get all sorts of emotional over your cutting board. By having fresh onions and a sharp knife, you'll slice through those onions cleanly, keeping the oils on your knife and on your board. Now, 5 pounds could take a while, so if you still find yourself crying halfway through, well, open a window, silly. Now, to begin our soup, we need to caramelize our onions. To ensure even browning, use a wide bottom pot to expose as much surface area as possible. If not, this will take you twice as long. You can use an additional pan if you need, and then just add all the good bits back later. With a few tablespoons of olive oil, add an appropriate amount of onions to your pot. Cook on medium heat and let them sit and get color for a few minutes before you slowly start to move them around. We're going to repeat this process, keeping an eye on them until they are all beautifully browned. This will take about 20 minutes or so. I like to add a little bit of salt to help expel more moisture out of our onions. This not only speeds this process up a bit, but prevents them from burning or browning too quickly. So use this trick to control the speed of your onions to your desire. You can of course add butter here to help brown these off for a more velvety and sexy flavor. Yeah, I said it. But keep in mind we already will be adding quite a bit of extra fat later with the marrow. These are what our onions should look like at about halfway. Now, this will take a while, so let's get some other prep in while these are going. This is our nice baguette, or baseball bat in French. Using a serrated knife, we're going to cut 1/2-inch pieces, just like this, that we will then lightly dress in olive oil, salt, and pepper, and toast them in a 375-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 15 to 20 minutes, or until golden brown, like so. These will stay fresh in an airtight container no longer than 48 hours. Now, at this point, our bone marrow is looking just right and ready to be shucked, if you will. Taking the back of a spoon or skewer, scoop out the inside of the bone marrow. If you are unfamiliar, this incredible fatty jelly is the marrow that lives inside the bones of all animals, and humans, for that matter. But that would be gross, so we'll stick to beef marrow today. This should come out quite easily, just be sure to be cautious of any tiny bone fragments, as bones can become quite brittle after roasting. Grab your tiniest saucepan, just like so, and empty the bones into the pot. We will be further cooking this to render out the marrow and just extract the fatty jelly that will stay intact. This will have the best texture for later. By the way, you can save those bones for Justin. He might need them later. Next, we're going to grate our cheese. I'm using a fancy schmancy Gruyere, but any Gruyere or Swiss will do here. If you don't like Swiss and would like to go another route, Fontina, Asiago, Mozzarella, or even Munster, while all not being French cheeses, are still excellent melting cheeses for this purpose. If you take anything away from this video, let it be this. Don't buy pre-shredded. It sucks and is almost always packed with some sort of extra starch that gets weird while melting. Take the time and just grate it yourself. You could use the workout anyway. Now, as you see here, our onions are perfectly caramelized and ready to go. Our pan has a bit of fond on the bottom, but we're going to clean that up with a little bit of champagne vinegar. This is optional and you could use stock, wine, or even water, but I like the bite this little bit of acidity adds. After we deglaze, I'm going to take my onions out and start adding my bones. I then cover the bones with about 2 gallons of water or beef stock and let that all get well acquainted for at least 60 minutes. Here we have the marrow that we reserved. We're going to start slowly cooking this down so the loose fat just melts, leaving us this warm, soft jelly of marrow. This is going to act like a butter as we dress our toast before serving. Go slow with this and keep an eye on it. Going too fast will melt all of the marrow, which isn't a bad thing, just not quite what we're looking for. Now after 60 minutes, we can extract our bones. If you are just using water, you can leave them in for the entirety of this recipe to further impart more beef flavor. I used half water and half stock because I didn't have enough stock, so I'm going to take mine out now before adding my bones back in. With the onions back in play and our stock drained of any bone shards, we can further cook this for at least 1 hour or let it simmer and go all day, but an hour will do for our minimum steeping time. I also like to add in some aromatics, like a few sprigs of thyme, but do this in your final 20 minutes. Leaving them in any longer than that will leave a bitter taste. Be sure to taste your soup before serving and season with salt and pepper. It took me quite a few times to really get that seasoning right, so don't be scared to play with this. When we're ready to plate, we can start prepping our toasts. Take a generous amount of marrow and spread it onto your bread. If you've never had bone marrow, take this opportunity to try it right now while it's hot and salty. It's seriously too good to be true. And now for the finale. Grab a sheet tray as it will be easier to manage these hot bowls coming out of the oven later. With a ladle, start filling your favorite oven-safe bowls with the contents of our soup. I like to do more onions first to ensure I have the proper amount and then top with any necessary broth after. Next, shingle in your bone marrow toast and begin to pile high with our cheese. Work quick here as your toasts are now getting less crispy the longer they sit in the broth. You have some time here, so don't stress, yet still work with a sense of urgency. Before piling our cheese, I like to add a few additional thyme leaves to almost steam under the cheese and add a wonderful aroma to our soup as our guests take their first bite. What are you doing? That is not enough cheese. Come on, man, they hand grated this. Yup. Okay. More. Dude, just throw the whole thing on there. What are you being scared of? Thank you. Once you have the appropriate amount of cheese, why do I gotta fight with you, man, every time? Now they are ready to go into the oven. With your broiler set to high, pop your soups in the oven for about 5 to 8 minutes, or until golden brown and bubbly. And there you have it. The cheesiest and fattiest little soup you never knew you needed. With a warm, roasty feeling, crunchy toast, and cheesy bread with the sweet aromatics of fresh herbs. This is how you take something so simple and turn it into truly something extraordinary. Till next time, friends.